So, as we begin, I know you're eager to know who all is up here with me today. And so, the first thing I want to ask our panel to do is to introduce themselves and to share with you and us why they think it's so important for us to have conversations around mental health in a faith context. So, essentially, they're answering the question about when I invited them, why did they say yes to coming to be here today? And so we'll begin with my dear friend Sheila.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Hi, everybody. My name is Sheila Cameron. I'm a wife, mother of 3 little ones. I have a 7-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter, and a 2-year-old baby boy. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have a practice in San Diego, California. And then I also am the director of the New Life Counseling Center. We have 10 amazing licensed therapists. We see in-person clients, and then we also have virtual appointments for all of California residents. This is really important, and thank you for inviting all of us here today. For many of us, I think we grew up with the messaging. We may have grown up with messaging that Jesus Christ is all we'll ever need, ever. And that if we have enough faith, the right kind of faith, if we pray enough, the right kind of prayers, that we'll be okay and nothing will go wrong. That's all we need, right? That messaging can be very harmful for those struggling with mental illness, with those struggling with emotional, psychological distress, and those struggling with substance abuse. So I think it's important for us to realize that we're here as relational beings, that God created us like the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. We're relational, and that we're here to support each other and lift each other up and love each other during times that we cannot find that hope. So that's why I'm here. I'm passionate about that. And I know you are too. That's right. Thanks so much, Sheila.
Good morning. Morning. My name is Greg Ledoux. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I had her job before she got it. I was the director at the New Life Counseling Center for a number of years. And that's where I met Jessica. Jessica and I served that church for a number of years together, and it's a pleasure, Jessica.
So
thank you for inviting me. I then moved from First Church to San Carlos United Methodist Church, where your former pastor now serves.
That's right.
And I've taught graduate school courses in family systems theory and marriage and family therapy. And one of the important things about faith community, and Sheila touched on it, we live and function in community, and we need the support of a community. And this balance between doing individual work and having the support of a community is important. But the other thing I wanted to touch on very quickly, when we hear mental health, we think automatically mental illness, but we are called to become whole, complete. One of the toughest scriptures I had to deal with was Matthew, where it says, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect." And a lot of people don't come in because they feel like they're not perfect. If they're broken, somehow their faith has faltered. And we need to understand that communities of faith are important because the word perfect really means whole, complete. And we draw strength from each other during times of stress. But we're called to be transformed and to be changed over time. And that's often difficult. So we need the strength that we draw from God and from each other.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Beth Otterbein, and I am a mother of 4 and bubby or grandma to 4. I am a registered nurse. Faith community nurse, originally known as a parish nurse, and I work for Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach, and in that role, we partner with about 50 faith partners of all denominations, And we integrate the care of mind, body, and spirit in everything that we do. And in my title is community, and as I will reiterate, it is about supporting one another as a community. And we do that as faith community nurses by intentionally listening. And my role, I love to educate, but the most important role that I have is being available to listen with intention and to pray with those that want to pray, but just to be present. And I think that's the most important role that I have.
My name is Leanne Orm. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a member here at Anaheim United Methodist Church. Have been for over 30 years, and actually I grew up in the old White Temple, so I've been around quite a while. And I have this faith family to thank, in part, helping me with scholarship money during my training. I also facilitate in partnership with Nancy Cromer, the grief group here, and I have a private practice in Tustin. I entered this field to a very great extent because of my belief that faith and mental health are completely interwoven. God made us, as Craig said, to be whole, and that despite the fact that over the many decades of the development of the mental health field, the message has kind of come through to the faith community that mental health issues it's threatening to faith. And that is very definitely the opposite of what I believe. And so I'm really happy to participate in this group as a part of my desire to help bring that attitude to an end and end that stigma that mental health and faith just can't go together. Well, I don't believe that. So I'm very happy to be here to that end.
Thank you, Leanne. Wonderful. Well, the next question that I want to share with all of our panelists is that over the past month, we in our congregation have been focusing on a series around mental health and faith. And some of the topics we've covered are recovering the joy of enough, communities of honesty and healing, which touches on what many of you have lifted up, the importance of community, going beyond coping, that more than surviving is possible, and getting rid of stigma.
Right.
And so in your experience and in your unique areas of work, where do you see connections between mental health and spiritual health? And as you view those connections, what do you think we can learn or do in response? Maybe there's some opportunity for us to learn something new or to do something differently.
I think of those topics, the one that I feel the most connection with is recovering the joy of enough. Because I think that so many of us struggle with the idea of, am I enough? Am I enough for my family? Am I enough for my society? Am I enough in my own eyes? And an awful lot of the time, our problems stem from the fact we don't believe we are enough. But in God's eyes, we always are enough, more than enough. And so for us within the faith community to work to make that truth clearer is a part of how we develop and nurture our own mental health and the mental health of the people around us.
I think what Jessica's doing here by opening up conversation, making it okay to talk about mental health is a huge step, because that's not always been the case in faith communities. Making it okay and having those conversations, removing the stigma, and then being a resource. I think the most important thing is that we know we have someplace to go. Faith communities are often where we feel most comfortable. We have our people here. So Jessica has made this a comfortable place for people to come and feel that they're welcomed and accepted. And I think that's a huge step in just overcoming the stigma that surrounds mental health issues.
I'm not sure I have a whole lot to add to that. It really is true that we need to open and become transparent to each other. Part of being in a safe, welcoming, loving community is the ability to open ourselves in, especially when we're hurting. Those opportunities when you need the support of someone, and even when your faith is wavering because of what you're struggling with, you need to be able to come and be able to say, I'm struggling with my faith and I'm struggling with it because of this issue, and find a place where you're welcomed and those questions and doubts are okay to have. It's important to know that you are not deficient. Everybody struggles at some point with something, and it's important to know that there is a welcoming community and a place where you can be open and honest about what you're struggling with, and know that God will meet you in that place. So I'm really thankful that you did this past month in May on these issues, and especially the subject of stigma. We don't mind saying I broke a leg in like the children's sermon, but it's harder to say I'm depressed or I'm struggling with an issue of chemical abuse or something else. It's important to know that you're welcomed in this place. Absolutely. And there is healing available for you.
So mental health and spiritual health, I believe, are one and the same. They go hand in hand. And in my clinical work, we'll focus on mental health, as all, practitioners do. There is the psycho, assessment and social assessments that go on. And with the emphasis of focusing on one's relationship with the self, one's relationship with community and other systems that that individual is a part of. I also think it's important for all helpers, not just licensed professionals, but all helpers, to also assess the spiritual health of an individual, particularly if somebody identifies as Christian or having a relationship with God, connection with the universe, the creator, that we will then assess, like, how is that significant for you? How did that come to be? With any relationship, even with a relationship with God, there's ups and downs. So to know a person deeply is to really understand that spiritual relationship with somebody and understand how oppressive it might have been for them to be in faith communities and how healing it could be for them to be in faith communities. So we really want to understand what that spiritual relationship was like with God, as well as understanding what healing needs to be done and maybe how they cope and what resiliencies are there because of that relationship.
Oh, Greg has a follow-up to that, Sheila. You touched a nerve.
I wanted to mention this. The word psychology has its root from a Greek word, psyche. We've made the word psychology mean mind and emotions. In Greek, the word psyche means soul. Where else would you go when your soul is hurting than to church? And as Sheila said, it's important that you know that it's safe and that the self, when the soul is hurting, needs solace, and some of that comes from God. And as much as I hate to say it, the church has been a source of some of that injury. And so it becomes even harder to come back to church if church has been the place that has in some way hurt you. It's important then to be even more transparent and welcoming to those people so that they get what their soul needs.
Absolutely. And as you all are talking, I just want to share again how important I think it is for those of us who serve as pastors to know to be a welcoming, listening place, a place of confidentiality, and for me to know my limitations too, and to know great people and great resources where if I know I need to make a referral for you, I can do that with confidence about the people that I'm referring someone to talk to. And so I love that partnership that often church is the first place someone might feel comfortable to share, but it might not be the end of the people they need resourcing and support from. So I take that really seriously, and I know you all do as well. I want to move us to our next question of, in your experience, what is it that stops people of faith from seeking help with mental health issues? You've started to bring that up, but let's focus on that a little more.
I think it's because we just simply don't talk enough about it. And that's why these conversations are so crucial. Even there's now this whole push for mental health from the pandemic. That's one of the beautiful things that's come out of all of the pain of the pandemic, is now that we're talking about mental health more. There's accessibility to virtual sessions. And even before the pandemic, there was telehealth, but people didn't really know much about it. And now it's everywhere. So we need to continue to talk about it, continue to have these conversations. And also for leaders, not just pastors, not just teachers, lay leaders of every kind, coaches, for us to model transparency in appropriate ways when we are struggling. We need to talk about it, but also normalize that this is part of the human experience and that it's okay. It's okay to struggle. So that will hopefully inspire somebody else who's suppressed and stuffed down their suffering to actually say something and reach out for help.
What stops people from coming in is a one-word answer, really: fear. The fear of being vulnerable, the fear of being open that you're struggling with something. It's a fear of being judged. Even here in a safe place like church, it's a fear. And what all of us have touched on is the need to remove that stigma and fear of judgment that comes with saying, yeah, I'm struggling with something. But what stops people is the fear that they're going to be judged. And to the degree that you can remove that, you're going to open your people up to seeking more help sooner.
Yeah, and expanding on fear is the shame that people feel by being open, or the inability, not being able to express that because of that shame. And we touched on a little bit of some of the damage that may have been done in the past in a faith community, and overcoming that can be a very difficult hurdle for people to get over if they've been hurt by the church. I think a lot of that judgment, not being open to fault and all the guilt that had been put on us as children in church often, made it so church wasn't a welcoming place. It was very judgmental. So I think, we've come a huge distance. We've come a long way to overcome that. This is what we're doing today, talking about it. But I think, from a young age, many of us came from those environments with guilt and judgment. So I think that had pushed us away.
I think over the decades of the development of the mental health field, there's been a lot of mutual antagonism between faith communities and practitioners of mental health services, and kind of each not really trusting the other one, feeling threatened by the other one. And I think that we as members of the faith community can do our part to diminish that, for us to become more open and welcoming to people in whatever their needs are, including mental health needs. There's so much in the way of grief and loss and despair that people face, but it's hard to talk about. And so for us, as has been said, for us to be listeners and then show compassion, that's something we here at church are very well equipped to do.
Wonderful. Thank you all for engaging with that. I wonder, do you have any ideas about how a congregation like ours nurture good mental health community? That could, of course, include our congregation, but also beyond our congregation. How could we, how could we nurture good mental health together?
I think we can begin here at home, as many good works begin, with one another, with being willing to listen non-judgmentally to one another, but then also taking that with us, whether it's through a church-related function like our neighborhood pantry, but also as we go out into the community, just as members of the community, we take our faith with us, faith in our belief in the value of humans, that God loves each and every person and all are precious to him, so that guides and directs us in how we interact with others within the community. We can actively support with our presence and our gifts, not only things going on here at church, but also other activities, other efforts within the community. There's so many areas people struggle with, and we can pick that which is the most meaningful to us and give it some of our time and effort, while at the same time being open to making it known that we're motivated by our faith, so that people in the community can see that people of faith are welcoming and supportive of those who need mental health services.
I think opening these conversations, just being seen as a welcoming community is a great start. That's what Jessica's doing now. Being a resource, I think knowing that this faith community is up to date on what is available to the larger community, always having resource lists available, knowing who to refer to. There's great programs out there. One of the programs that we offer through Hoag and some of our nurses are offering is a program called Mental Health First Aid. And we train individuals, all people of all ages, how to identify mental health challenges and how to assess them, how to approach individuals, how to non-judgmentally listen, provide resources. So it's a whole program, a training that I would love to bring to this church. But it opens up that conversation. It trains you to feel comfortable approaching someone, how to go about doing that. And it's a curriculum it's typically about 2 hours of pre-work where you do some study on mental health challenges, and then about 6 hours of curriculum that we work through what's called the ALGE acronym program and work through those steps to help you to identify and approach and listen and provide support. So I would love to bring that to all of you.
That's wonderful. And we'll definitely look for a time when you can do that, Beth. That's a great resource. And I actually went through that training with Sheila when I was in San Diego. It's very helpful. So we'd love to find a time for that.
On a really practical level, listen. Listen not to respond. Listen to understand. You are sitting here together with each other in a community, but none of us really know what's going on in each other's lives. You're going to be working in a pantry someplace. You're going to be repairing something on campus. Somebody's going to say something, and it won't be totally overt, but you need to hear it and understand that it may be somebody who needs help. Learning to listen, really to hear, because it comes up in often very subtle ways that somebody is reaching out or in need of help. So one of the things that you as a community can do is learn to do some active listening and some listening for what isn't said as much as what is.
I think we need to continue to create moments to connect with each other deeply. And many of that is all already going on in an organization, in a church. There's fellowship time, maybe before or after service, maybe virtual book clubs or in-person praying circles. There are moments that we can connect, and it's on us to ask ourselves, how deep do I want this conversation to go, right? Or how deeply do I want to listen? How much do I want to be vulnerable and reveal? So asking ourselves to take that step, to put ourselves in the presence of others with that intention to deeply connect and ask each other, not the superficial, how are you doing, but how are you doing really? Right. How is it with your soul, he said. Or to ask, what is a rose and a thorn of your week? Sometimes kids get asked, what are the peaks and valleys of your day, and they'll share. Or how can I pray for you? What's heavy on your heart? So asking those questions, don't just take I'm fine, everything's good. And I know that that's easy because we're, as a culture, we're very rushed. We are rushed. And so we'll take the fine and we'll give the fine. And we're carrying so much more than that. So to slow down and be really intentional with deeply connecting, being vulnerable and listening.
I need to say this as a retired pastor. You guys do this to us. You will leave after a worship service, and in passing, you will say something really deep, and we don't have a moment to respond to it. And we need to follow up with it. And this happens with each of you, too. And this is what I mean by listening. Somebody will just drop something on you. Follow up on it. Pay attention to it. Don't let it just slide by.
Good word. Good word, Greg.
Just one other program I wanted to share with you, and I will be at the resource fair and be available to talk more about it, is Art for Healing. And it's a program for small groups. It's an intimate environment, which does allow for sharing, and it's through abstract art, and it allows for expression through art, but then an opportunity to share, and it is a very powerful tool, and I am excited to share that with your congregation as well. And I think also hugging is really important.
I wanted to add, too, that we need to educate ourselves and we need to educate the young among us. And one of the things I think that's really important for us to educate ourselves about is emotions, and to help teach our children emotions, to name their emotions, to recognize them, to understand that the emotions they feel are not always comfortable, but they're still our friends. And they still give us information and help. And we can hear that about ourselves, as well as learning to listen, as we've said, to that in others. What are the emotions people are feeling? And we can educate ourselves and our young about emotions in a very intentional way. Talk about it before bed at night. What did you feel today? We can journal ourselves, making kind of an emphasis on naming some of the emotions I felt today and why I felt them. But to get to have, to be more educated about our own emotions and to be more informed about what we experience and why is a really practical way to address this.
Thank you so much. Last question for each of you as we're wrapping up here. What would you like to share with people here today who, whether might have a friend or a family member who's struggling with their mental health? What would you want us to know today?
I think, again, to reiterate what's been said, I think for us to be listeners and watchers, to be aware of the needs of others, be aware of what's happening around us, be sensitive to it, is a place to start. But also to recognize that we can encourage people to seek help, make an observation like, I'm really glad to be here for you and listen, but what you're sharing with me sounds like maybe it would be helpful for you to talk to someone on a more regular basis, someone who's professional. Can we look at maybe what your insurance provides? Let's see about what resources we can come up with. As the church, we can be a source for those resources, but as individuals, we can also make some suggestions that might help. And also being willing, as it's appropriate, to open up about some of our own struggles so that our loved ones know they're not alone and that they can approach their difficulties in a positive and constructive way.
Yeah, I think we've said a lot. I think what we've shared really has opened up conversation. I hope it has been, valuable for all of you to know that this is a open and supportive environment to come to the resource fair, see what we're offering there, know that there is professional support. There are resources available to you, but you're not alone. And see come across in this discussion. Thank you.
The internet is a wealth of information, and that's good news, bad news. But there are a number of organizations. If you have a family member who is struggling with a specific mental illness, there are resources, support groups. And one of the ones I would mention specifically is an organization called NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. There are chapters all over the country, all over the state. They're marvelous at informing you about specific mental illnesses, but the thing that is most important about NAMI is they offer support groups for families who struggle with people with chronic mental illnesses. So that's a resource I would really want you to be aware of.
Thank you, Greg.
I just want to leave you with this idea that feelings are not facts. So feelings are not facts. Okay? And also this reality that you're not a burden, even though you might feel like it sometimes. You're absolutely not. You're more loved than you can ever imagine. And there are people that are here to help you. Even if you have to try again, there are people to help you. And also the resources that are really important are 988 is a suicide text and hotline. And then if you text HOME, HOME, to 741-741, they can connect you to a licensed professional.
Wonderful resources. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. The presence that you've had here today is a healing presence, and the words you've shared are words of hope. And so I hope you'll join me in thanking our wonderful guests today.
Teaching.